And I know that my colleagues are not comfortable with decriminalization either of prostitution.
Next bill on the list, House Bill 2526.
As a reminder, House Bill 2526 concerns prostitution.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that proposed substitute House Bill 2526 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. I guess I'll move the amendment. Amendment will 275. This is a really important amendment to me personally. I was trafficked from the ages of 11 to 13, and I would not seek help because I knew that I was going to be criminalized. I think it's important that if we're going to increase penalties, and I'm okay with increasing penalties on people who are purchasing human bodies for sex, but I think, and the research shows, that coupling that with lesser punitive measures for the survivors is part of the solution to actually get to the goals of what this legislation is trying to achieve. And I know that my colleagues are not comfortable with decriminalization either of prostitution. And so my amendment is really trying to compromise and seek a right balance where we are not decriminalizing the act of prostitution, but we are saying that if a survivor comes forward or if a person engaged in consensual sex work, either way, the first two times they will be deferred or referred into services as opposed to arrested. And that way, hopefully, we can get people help so they can escape that life if they are wanting that, or they can get into some kind of job training or some other way of providing for themselves if that's what they choose. And on the other hand, though, it does increase into a Class C felony if a person assaults a person that is engaged in prostitution. And also the underlying bill that we're going to consider increases criminal penalties for that as well. So I feel strongly that this is an important part of the solution and that we would not be able to actually solve the problem that this legislation is trying to solve without this amendment.
Chair recognizes Representative Griffey.
Most of the amendment I do agree with. There's a couple things that I disagree with, and I think the biggest thing is when we say refer, that law enforcement is to refer to a program. There's no programs like that in the state of Washington. I mean, very few. There might be in Seattle, King County. So we're going to require law enforcement to do something that may quite very well be, it's not available. So what are we going to do if somebody is chronically, on the corner engaging in these? We have got to do something, and I think law enforcement's charges, as that's how they deal with it. For that, I am a no on this amendment.
All right, we will vote on the amendment. All those in favor of adopting Amendment Whale 275, please say aye. Aye. And all those opposed?
Nay.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The motion before the committee is to report out a proposed substitute House Bill 2526 on final passage. Encouraging passage of this bill is a balance between those holding those accountable who buy sex by raising the criminal penalties and protecting those who are victims of trafficking by offering them services and protection from arrest in other circumstances. Any further comments? Chair recognizes Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to raise a process objection on the bill. So the bill before us now has not been vetted. It's a fundamentally different policy than the bill for which the committee entertained testimony, and there's been no robust stakeholder work on this policy. In a philosophical sense, I agree entirely that women engaged in prostitution should not be criminalized. But the laws we write here are applied in the real world. It's not a theoretical exercise. These women are not entrepreneurs. The term sex work implies volition. The vast majority of the women walking the track in my district are victims. They're not there by choice. Representing North Aurora, I've learned some things. There's a kind of pimp called a guerrilla pimp. Guerrilla pimps dominate their victims by force and violence. I know of a guerrilla pimp who took razor blades to his victim's back, and another who had his victim mauled by dogs. Pimps refer to these women as their product. The level of coercion involved in human trafficking is astounding and overlaps significantly with patterns of coercive control that we see in domestic violence. The policy before us is built on two legal fictions. The first is that we're going to be convicting sex buyers of felonies, and the second is that prostitution will remain illegal. It's a false idea that a gross misdemeanor penalty is going to curb demand. It's incredibly difficult to catch a sex buyer once, let alone thrice. There are many of them and very few law enforcement officers. With this bill, purchasing a human being's body for sex will carry the same force of law as stealing a candy bar. When we talk about the two required diversions prior to enforcement action, I've seen this movie before. This is the precise policy that we voted on for drug possession in 2021, a policy that I crafted. And while I'm an outlier in the legislature in that I still emphatically agree in principle that we should not be arresting people solely for the crime of simple drug possession, it never occurred to me what would happen when we de facto decriminalized. We saw an unprecedented level of brazenness with drug use, people smoking fentanyl on the bus, endangering the health of our transit operators and fellow passengers, children exposed to drug use on their walk to school. It's my obligation to learn from my past mistakes as a legislator. Proponents of the policy before us say that there are two parts to the model: increasing criminal penalties for sex buyers and decriminalizing prostitution. But the truth is that there are actually three parts to the model: increasing penalties for sex buyers, decriminalizing prostitution, and the third, a massive expansion of services, including treatment, housing, and employment. This bill contains no expansion of services of any kind and not 1 cent of additional funding. In fact, in last year's budget cuts, the legislature massively defunded the services that are specifically allocated for victims trying to escape trafficking and rebuild their lives. The state of Rhode Island, where I attended college and where the good chairman hails from, actually attempted a similar policy to the one before us. It was an abject failure, and their legislature reversed. They wrote that decriminalization created a zone of impunity in which police could not go and where traffickers could exploit their prey. This policy will also make it easier for pimps to recruit because there's no legal liability, there's no downside. We already hear juveniles that are being trafficked say that their pimps coerce them in this way. You know, I have a pretty unique perspective on this subject because Highway 99, the second largest prostitution tract in the United States, runs from the southern terminus of my district to the northern terminus. And yet if I compare two neighboring jurisdictions in my district, one of them is overwhelmed with prostitution, sex buyers, and pimps, and one is not. 145th divides North Seattle and Shoreline and cuts across Aurora Avenue North. On the southern side in Seattle, prostitution is highly visible. In Shoreline, non-existent. The only difference is enforcement. It's not just that parents in my district ask me why it is that they have to drive their sons to school past nearly naked women who are beckoning them. It's also the violence. The violence follows the women. This committee has heard from my constituents about having to duck in their living rooms along North Aurora due to gunfire. We hear about turf wars with drug dealers, but the same is true for pimps. Their turf wars are fought with firearms. It would be naive to suggest that decriminalizing prostitution will lead to anything other than an explosion in street-based sex work. It's an opportunity for pimps to bring their product to new markets. I also have serious reservations about the timing of decriminalizing prostitution ahead of the World Cup. Sex trafficking exists because sex buyers exist. The original bill addressed that. This version does not, and I'll be voting no.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Chair recognizes Representative Farbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a lot to say on this issue, but will do my best to be brief. I represent the 46th Legislative District, which includes 1.5 miles of East Aurora, where I regularly see women who are selling sex in broad daylight, who I believe to be trafficked women, who I'm deeply concerned about. This version of the legislation, including the amendments that we have just adopted, makes it easier for women to ask for help and to come forward, and easier to hold sex buyers accountable for their abuse and for their purchasing of human bodies, because the women will feel comfortable and like they are able to come forward because they will not be as criminalized. I hear the urgency in this conversation, and I believe that everyone here is acting with the goal of reducing harm and supporting individuals who are being trafficked and trying to help them escape that horrific abuse. And this committee has had robust dialogue on this issue for 2 years now. I want to say that I deeply appreciate the courage of people with direct lived experience for whom we have heard from at many different opportunities and across the spectrum, who shared some of the most difficult, traumatic, horrific parts of their lives with us in an effort to help us understand and make the right decision here. Many of those women themselves spoke of being arrested when they came forward to get help, to hold their traffickers, to hold the perpetrators and buyers accountable. This bill addresses that as well. The women we're worried about and pushing this legislation forward will not and do not come forward because they're concerned about being arrested themselves. This substitute enhances the underlying bill by moving closer to a survivor-centered approach that makes it possible for them to come forward. It also increases fines significantly, and it requires that all of the proceeds from those fines, apart from a 2% administrative fee, I believe, go directly to community-based and survivor-led organizations, which are the same programs that these women will be referred into. It also provides several robust protections for the individuals that are being trafficked, again, so that they can feel safe to come forward and are not criminalized for trying to get help. In turn, it will allow us to better hold traffickers and purchasers accountable for their abuses. And while I'm going to be supporting this legislation today, I do still remain concerned that much of the evidence that we have been offered as to why we should increase penalties and take this approach misses some important components. I also am concerned that we are disappearing from the public view this problem rather than actually improving people's lives, because reduced visibility is just not the same as reduced harm. This legislation attempted to implement part of the Nordic model, as my good colleague described the 2 and truly 3 components of it, which are absolutely services, which we are attempting to make progress on in this legislation. In countries that have adopted the Nordic model, that buyer accountability was introduced alongside of decriminalization and strong public supports, not as a standalone enforcement strategy. And in this legislation, enforcement is moving first, while many lived experiences, especially those who do not fit neatly into a single narrative, are not fully reflected in the policy design. I've heard from so many of my constituents, including people who are closest to this issue, who have survived trafficking themselves, who have expressed concern and have overwhelmingly asked me to not support this legislation. But I think what matters isn't how strong a policy sounds, but whether it truly improves safety and stability. And while I'll be voting yes today, I do believe that we owe survivors and our communities at large ongoing honesty about what works, what doesn't, and the courage to change course if needed. And that is why I'll be voting yes today.
For the vote, we'll have a roll call, please. Representative Goodman votes aye.
Representative Goodman votes aye. Simmons?
Aye.
Representative Simmons votes aye. Graham?
Graham votes nay, do not pass.
Representative Graham votes nay, do not pass. Griffey?
Nay, do not pass.
Representative Griffey votes nay, do not pass. Burnett?
Burnett votes nay, do not pass.
Representative Burnett votes nay, do not pass. Davis? Representative Davis votes nay, do not pass. Farivar?
Farivar, aye.
Representative Farivar votes aye. Fossey?
Aye.
Representative Fossey votes aye. Obras? Representative Obras votes aye. Mr. Chair, you have 5 ayes and 4 nays.
Thank you. By your vote, the committee reports out substitute House Bill 2526 with a do pass recommendation.